Too many Vermonters, like people all across the country, don't save enough for retirement. Vermont Saves is a new state program which was approved by the legislature last year, but won't be fully launched until 2025. It's designed to help those who aren't able to build a comfortable nest egg for retirement. It's a state run payroll reduction Roth IRA plan whereby employees can have 5% of their paychecks, which can be increased 1% annually up to 8%, deducted and put into a retirement plan to supplement their Social Security. Employers with at least 5 employees who do not offer their own retirement or pension plans will be obligated to enroll their employees. Those employees can, at a later point, opt out if they wish. In December 2023, Treasury Secretary Mike Piechek made a stop in Manchester at the community library to describe the new plan. It addresses a need that too many people overlook, don't think about until it's too late, or simply can't afford to set aside the money until their working days and income producing years are coming to an end. It will expand to businesses with 15 to 24 employees on January 1st, 2026, and to employers with 5 to 14 employees on July 1st, 2026.
But what we're actually going to ask the legislature for is the ability to speed that whole process up. We think we can implement the program basically in one step, that we don't need to go through multiple steps, that we are a small enough state, the vendor has enough experience, they've done this with enough other states that they don't think we need this big long ramp up period. And that's a lot easier, I think, messaging wise, to tell everyone that this is the date instead of, if you're over 20 employees, this is the date. If you're under 20 employees, but more than 10, this is the date, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to speed that whole process up. And then we're also trying to get flexibility so that the program can start even earlier than July of 2025, because we think that with the state partnership, we can implement it even more quickly. One of the challenges we identified, and I think one of our big challenges we have as a country, not just in Vermont, is how are we going to be safe and secure financially in our retirements? It's something that keeps a lot of people up at night. I think the statistics are very scary. It's like 50 or 60% of people say that they worry, sort of to the point of being almost like chronically worried about their retirement. There's a very high percentage of Americans that have not saved anything for their retirement. They haven't been able to do that, and it's not all that surprising. I mean, we're in this generation where retirement is on our shoulders. Past generations, the thought was that you worked at a particular company, you worked there for 20 or 30 or 40 years. They would provide for your retirement. Social Security was sort of an add-on. And now Social Security for a lot of people is one of the primary resources that they have in retirement, as well as potentially a 401k plan. But that puts all of the retirement burden and all the risk of outliving your retirement on you, rather than sort of sharing that risk with yourself, with an employer, with the federal government. So what does that mean? It means oftentimes people are sort of scared about how do I invest for retirement? They don't know sort of the first place to go. They don't know what strategies they should employ. And that concern and that fear often leads to paralysis in action. And that's particularly true for individuals that don't even have an employer-sponsored retirement plan. So things are kind of tough across the board for those that are looking at retirement, for a large segment of the United States and of Vermonters as well. But for those that don't have an employer-based retirement program, it's even more of a concern. Because the data will show that 95% of people that don't have access to retirement through their workplace are just not saving anything for retirement. They're not saving a penny for retirement. And that's because, again, that burden is now sort of on the individual to figure out their retirement and figure out how to not outlive their money. And a lot of people don't know where to turn. And when there is a 401k that provides them an easy, accessible vehicle to start saving. But when there's not that 401k, when there's not that employer-based retirement program, large swaths of Americans and large swaths of Vermonters are just not saving.
We talked with Becky Wasserman, the executive director of the Vermont Saves program, to learn more.
Right. So there is no cost to an employer. Their only responsibility or obligation under the law is to enroll their employees into the program. And that obligation only applies if they have 5 or more employees. So in Vermont, that's the cutoff of where the mandate starts at 5 or more employees. So there's no mandate right now if you have, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 employees. The contribution is solely coming from the employee's paycheck, and the employee can choose to do the default contribution that the treasurer sets, or they can opt out of the program entirely. So it's voluntary for them to even be in it. They can decide to have more or less contribution out of their paycheck. It's totally up to them. The program received an initial appropriation from the state to set itself up. But the sort of plan is that it won't be any ongoing cost to the state. So the program is run, a private program administrator will be administering the program. There are some fees that will come out of the savers, that are associated with, and that is going to sustain the program in the future. It is so there should be no ongoing state support necessary. So there are actually other states right now that are operating programs. In not all of them are interested in partnership, but we are in the process of investigating partnership opportunities with a handful of other states that have expressed interest in that. He probably mentioned Colorado specifically because they are the only state that has so far partnered with another state. So Colorado just finalized a partnership with both the state of Maine and the state of Delaware for their programs. So it does seem SHIP is sort of a more efficient and economical path forward for new states like Vermont who are starting out these programs, because it'll be more, lower costs for us and be more, efficient to partner with states that have been doing this for a couple of years now.
The event at the Manchester Community Library, where Secretary Pichek spoke last December, was organized by several of the area's state representatives, which included Kathleen James, Seth Bongartz, Mike Rice, Dave Durfee, and Robin Chesnut-Tangerman. The Treasury Secretary also touched on a couple of other topics as well.
Yeah, well, so on the economy, when you look at the Vermont economy right now, the greatest challenge we have is our lack of housing. You talk to employers across the state. I went to every single town in Vermont as part of our campaign, 252 towns, and I was really quite taken aback by how consistent the conversations were from community to community. Whether you're talking to a town clerk or a business owner or a principal or a doctor, they'd all tell the same story about the challenges they were having hiring people because those folks couldn't find housing or they couldn't afford housing in the community. So that, to me, is our number one issue holding back the full potential of the Vermont economy. There's not really a week that goes by where I don't hear a new story about an employer that's trying to hire people and they cannot do it because they're people that are trying to hire and recruit from out of state can't find housing, or even within the state. People are not even able to really move and seek jobs within our state because the housing situation is such a dire. We haven't had a program from the state of Vermont to support school construction aid since 2007. One of the only states that doesn't have a direct program from the state level to help local municipalities. We're also a unique state in terms of how we fund schools generally, but putting that to the side, we're one of the only states that does not have a school construction plan at the state level. So we did the state of Vermont and the Agency of Education did a facilities assessment where they went to every school in the state, over 300 schools, and said, what are your needs in the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years? And the cost to that, this wasn't to replace the buildings, it was just to basically maintain them, was over $2 billion. It was a significant number. So right now, that full $2 billion would fall on local municipalities, local school districts, local bonding, because there's no state aid program. A lot of municipalities don't want to take on any debt, let alone the amount of debt they need to take on to fix their schools. Bond votes have come up and been voted down. So I think it's a really critical moment for us to think about how do we implement a program that, again, we're not going to solve all of those problems right away. We're going to have to attack it piecemeal. We're going to have to put a reasonable program in place. But I think it's important that we start ticking away at those sort of 15-year in the making challenges we have with the state of our school facilities. Because the support of public education is going to be critical to attracting people that want to live here, for people that are going to be moving into Vermont, which is how we're going to grow our population. We're not growing it naturally from the state. A strong public education system is going to be critical for that.
For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.